The stars had always watched in silence, but that night, the silence felt different. Across the endless dark, a quiet message rippled through the galactic networks. A message so short and so simple that it left every species in the galaxy stunned. Humanity was leaving. No declaration of war, no demand for territory, no ultimatum. Just a quiet farewell, broadcast once and then never repeated. For a civilization known for its noise, its ambition, and its relentless curiosity, this sudden silence felt like the end of something vast. For centuries, humans had been the unpredictable force of the Galactic Council, bold, stubborn, and endlessly inventive. They were the ones who terraformed dying worlds, rebuilt shattered colonies, and stood beside weaker species when others turned away. They had been called reckless, dangerous, even chaotic, but no one ever called them cowards. And yet, one by one, their colonies went dark. Trade routes once thick with human ships emptied. Their great cities on alien worlds were left abandoned, lights fading as the last ships slipped quietly into hyperspace. No one knew where they were going. No one knew why. The Council tried to understand. They sent envoys, drones, and diplomats to the last known human settlements. But they found nothing. Only empty streets, silent machines, and the faint echoes of a people who had simply chosen to vanish. The recordings that came back unsettled everyone. There were no signs of conflict or struggle. It was as if humanity had tidied up after themselves and walked away. At first, the galaxy celebrated. Without humans, old rivalries softened. Trade stabilized. The political balance that had always wobbled under humanity's restless energy seemed to settle. The Council believed this was peace, true, lasting peace. But peace has a strange way of revealing what's been lost. The humans had left behind more than empty cities. They had left a void in the heart of the galaxy. Without them, exploration slowed. Innovation stalled. The music, the art, the laughter that humans carried wherever they went, all of it faded into memory. And then, strange things began to happen. Worlds once stabilized by human engineering started to fail. Energy systems built with human technology began to malfunction in ways no one could fix. Even the Great Council's archives, long protected by human-designed AI, started showing corrupted data, entire histories rewritten or missing. It was as if the galaxy itself was forgetting that humans had ever been there. The Council convened an emergency meeting. The chamber, once filled with debate and disagreement, was eerily quiet. They reviewed what little evidence remained, fragmented transmissions, abandoned research logs, a final message found encoded deep within an old human satellite. The message was short, a single line, translated into every known language. "We only ever stayed because we cared." No one spoke after that. The words hung heavy in the air, echoing like a promise or a warning. Somewhere beyond the reach of the known galaxy, humanity was watching, waiting. And as the Council looked out into the dark between the stars, they began to realize they might have made a terrible mistake, because the humans hadn't disappeared. They had simply walked away. And now, something was coming back. In the days after that meeting, the Council sent ships into the deep void, beyond the outer colonies, beyond even the last human borders. They searched for traces of where the humans had gone, but space is vast, and silence is a cruel companion. Many of those ships never returned. The few that did came back damaged, their crews shaken and unwilling to speak of what they had seen. The reports they did give were fragmented. Strange readings, massive energy signatures, and something that looked like a structure, a human design, but impossibly large, orbiting no known world. The Council dismissed the reports as sensor errors. It was easier that way. But rumors spread fast. Among traders, mercenaries, and explorers, whispers of the Quiet Fleet began to surface. Some said the humans had built a new home somewhere far beyond the mapped sectors. Others believed they were preparing for something, A few even claimed they were watching the galaxy from the dark, letting everyone believe they were gone while studying what would happen without them. Back on the central world of the Council, one observer couldn't let it go. They had spent years studying human behavior, fascinated by their contradictions, how they could be both kind and ruthless, curious, yet dangerous. The observer had watched the humans rise, their wars, their peace treaties, their laughter, and their art. To them, humanity wasn't just another species. They were a force of nature, unpredictable, chaotic, but deeply alive. And that force had simply vanished. The observer dug into the human archives, combing through files that had survived the data decay. What they found didn't make sense. Whole records of human history had gaps, as if someone, or something, had carefully removed pieces of their story. A few ancient transmissions recovered from forgotten satellites showed humans speaking about Project Homefire. No details, no coordinates, just that name. Whatever it was, it had been in motion for decades before they left. Meanwhile, the Council began to fracture. Without human mediation, old rivalries reignited. Trade disputes turned into blockades, and border tensions flared into open hostility. It was almost as if the humans had taken more than their technology and culture when they left. They had taken balance itself. Species that once thrived under human collaboration now struggled to cooperate. The galaxy was slipping back into the chaos that had existed before the humans ever arrived. Then came the signal. A faint pulse, steady, rhythmic, unmistakably human. It appeared in the background noise of deep space sensors across multiple sectors. No message, just a heartbeat of sound repeating every few seconds. Scientists argued over its meaning, politicians panicked, and the Council tried to keep it secret. But secrets never stay buried long. The pulse spread across communication channels, reaching ships and colonies everywhere. To many, it was a sign of hope. To others, it was a warning. And then, one night, a telescope on a remote outpost captured something extraordinary. A distant point of light, moving against the stars, growing brighter each day. It wasn't a comet, and it wasn't a ship, at least not like any ship they had seen before. The light pulsed in perfect rhythm with the signal. The observer stared at the data, heart pounding. The humans hadn't vanished into the dark to hide. They had gone to build something, to become something. And now, whatever they had become, was coming back. No one knew if the galaxy was ready for them. But the stars, those ancient witnesses, seemed to shimmer a little brighter, as if they remembered who had once walked among them. The light grew stronger over the following weeks. Every observatory, every listening post, every sensor station in the outer rim was tuned to it. The signal now carried faint fluctuations, patterns that some believed were language. The Council ordered all study suspended until they could agree on an official response, but not everyone obeyed. Independent explorers, driven by curiosity or desperation, raced toward the source. Some wanted answers. Others wanted to be the first to greet humanity's return. None of those ships made it back. Reports came in of entire crews vanishing mid-transmission. The final recordings were always the same, static, then silence, then a soft rhythmic hum that matched the pulse of the light. The Council tried to suppress the news, afraid of panic, but rumors spread faster than truth. Across the galaxy, fear mixed with awe. Some began to worship the returning humans as something beyond mortal, while others prepared defenses, convinced this was an invasion. Amid the growing tension, the observer was summoned by the Council. They stood before the Great Assembly, surrounded by beings from 100 worlds, their voices overlapping in anger and confusion. "You studied them," one delegate hissed. "You knew their ways. Tell us, what do they want?" The observer hesitated. They had no answer that would satisfy the Council. Humanity had always wanted many things: freedom, understanding, connection, sometimes even forgiveness. But this quiet, deliberate return felt different. It wasn't conquest, it wasn't diplomacy, it felt like judgment. Outside the council chambers, protests began to form. Some demanded the humans be welcomed back as allies. Others called for weapons to be prepared. Old enemies forged temporary pacts out of fear, pooling fleets and intelligence to face the unknown. Yet, deep down, everyone knew it wouldn't matter. Humanity had once built the very systems that kept the galaxy alive. Its power grids, its terraforming machines, its interstellar navigation. If they wanted to take control again, they wouldn't need to fire a single shot. Meanwhile, in a quiet research station orbiting a dying star, a young engineer intercepted a different kind of message. It was hidden inside the rhythmic pulse of the signal, buried deep in its frequency layers. When decoded, it wasn't words. It was music, a simple melody, ancient and familiar. Human. The engineer played it over the station's speakers, and for a moment, everything stopped. The tune was one that had once echoed through countless worlds, an old Earth song about coming home. The melody spread quietly across the networks, impossible to contain. Some said it was a greeting. Others claimed it was a warning. But everyone who heard it felt the same chill, a sense that the humans were not just returning to reclaim what was theirs, but to see what had become of those they had left behind. The council grew desperate. Fleets were deployed to the edge of known space, armed and ready, though no one truly believed weapons would make a difference. The observer was granted passage aboard one of the lead ships, tasked with trying to communicate if contact was made. As the ships approached the source of the light, the sensors began to fail, one by one. Through the static and distortion, a single transmission broke through. Human voices, countless of them, layered together, whispering in perfect unison. We watched. We waited. Now we see. The fleet captain froze. The light ahead was no longer a distant star. It was moving, spreading, growing brighter until it filled every screen. The hum became a roar, and every system screamed in overload. The observer leaned forward, whispering to no one in particular, "They're not coming back to destroy us. They're coming back to remind us." And then, the signal cut to black. The fleet drifted in stunned silence, engines humming at half power as the light ahead pulsed like a heartbeat in the void. Every system aboard the lead ship flickered, alarms chiming in warning tones that no one could silence. The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances, their voices barely audible over the growing resonance that seemed to penetrate the metal hull itself. The observer pressed their hand against the console, feeling the vibrations travel up their arm like a warning pulse. Humanity wasn't just here. They were everywhere, in every signal, in every wave of energy, in every part of space they had once touched. Outside, the light began to split, forming shapes, impossible, angular yet familiar. Ships, cities, machines built on a scale no one could comprehend. It was as if the humans had reassembled the galaxy itself according to their own vision, folding matter and energy in ways that defied physics, yet carried an unmistakable logic. The fleet captain barked orders, but the sensors failed again. Navigational grids warped, engines faltered, and for the first time, the Council's most advanced vessels were powerless. On the communication array, the rhythmic pulse returned, louder, sharper, almost like a living voice. The observer deciphered fragments, phrases repeating in countless layers, overlapping. "We see what you've done. We see who you've become. We are coming home." It wasn't a threat, but it carried weight heavier than any weapon. The observer's stomach twisted. Humans had always measured things differently, not by power, not by borders, but by consequence. And now, they were here to measure the galaxy's choices. In the distance, the light began to move toward the fleet. Slowly, deliberately. Every ship reported strange phenomena. Crew members seeing visions of abandoned human colonies. Entire worlds flickering in and out of existence, memories not their own surfacing in their minds. Some whispered in panic, Others wept quietly, overwhelmed by recognition of what humanity had left behind. Even the hardened warriors of the council felt something they couldn't name. A deep, primal fear that this wasn't about attack. It was about judgment. Suddenly, one of the outer ships sent a garbled transmission. Images appeared on the main screen. A sprawling structure of impossible scale, orbiting a star that didn't exist in any known registry. The architecture was human, unmistakably, yet evolved. Floating platforms, massive arcs of energy, fields that warped gravity. And scattered across the platforms were human figures, or something like humans, standing silently, watching. Their eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the light of the fleet as if they had been expecting this moment for centuries. The bridge went silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. The observer's voice trembled when they finally did. They've built themselves into the galaxy. This is not a ship or a fleet. It's a statement. The light pulsed faster, almost like a heartbeat racing toward climax. Systems on every council vessel began failing in waves. The outermost ships reported entire sections of space folding, stars disappearing and reappearing, creating impossible vistas of beauty and terror. The fleet's commander ordered retreat, but the observer knew it was futile. Humans had rewritten the rules of engagement without firing a single shot. And then, the pulse intensified, reaching every corner of the fleet at once. The voices returned, now louder, synchronized into a chorus that resonated inside every mind. We walked away quietly, and now we return to see. The observer gripped the console, staring at the advancing light, feeling the weight of centuries of human ingenuity, patience, and purpose. Every instinct screamed that something was about to happen, something no one could control, no one could prepare for. The entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the moment when humanity's quiet return would become undeniable. And in that frozen, terrifying silence, the light surged forward. The light didn't stop. It surged past the fleet, bending around vessels as if they weren't there, flowing through shields, through engines, through walls. For a moment, every ship in the formation shuddered, systems flashing, alarms screaming in impossible synchrony. The observer's heart pounded. This wasn't a fleet of humans returning to negotiate or fight. This was something else entirely, something that moved on its own terms, and it was coming for them. Then the unexpected happened. The pulse split. One half continued to surge forward, but the other half reversed, shooting back into deep space toward the Council's central worlds. Sensors went wild, recording impossible energy readings. It wasn't just a signal. It was a map, a trail, a warning. Somewhere, hidden in the chaos of light and sound, was a message the Council had never anticipated. The humans weren't just returning. They were revealing that someone, or something, had betrayed them. Whispers spread among the fleet's crews. Could it be that some council members, in the decades before humanity's departure, had acted against them, exploited their technology, mismanaged their colonies, ignored warnings? No one wanted to believe it. Humans had always been unpredictable, but they hadn't been deceived, or so they thought. Now the pulse suggested otherwise. Meanwhile, on the outer edges of the fleet, smaller scout vessels began transmitting images that defied belief. They captured fragments of stars collapsing and reforming in real time, alien worlds shifting as if reality itself was being rewritten. And in those images, faint shadows moved. Humans, but not as anyone had known them before. Their forms flickered, almost translucent, phasing in and out of existence, connected to the strange light in ways that suggested mastery over matter and energy beyond anything the galaxy had seen. The observer realized the implications instantly. These humans hadn't just left, they had evolved, or perhaps transformed. They had returned not just to reclaim or judge, but to demonstrate what humanity could become when it chose its own path. And if that was the case, then no weapon, no fleet, no alliance would matter. The galaxy itself would have to reckon with a power far greater than anything anyone had ever imagined. The Council's political halls erupted in panic. Delegates shouted over one another, demanding explanations, blaming each other, calling for immediate defense measures. But the observer knew that argument would achieve nothing. Humanity wasn't waiting for diplomacy. They were testing the galaxy, measuring it, watching how it would respond without them. And somewhere in the pulse, in that flickering light, was a warning. Every choice, every betrayal, every failure of the past decades had been recorded, and now it was being evaluated. Then came the second shock. A human voice, clear and calm, echoed directly through the fleet's communication channels. It spoke in no language known to the Council, but was somehow perfectly understood. "We did not leave because we could not stay. We left because you needed to prove yourselves. Now we see who you are." The observer swallowed hard. The pulse intensified again, spreading across every vessel, every mind, every corner of the galaxy where human technology had left traces. The humans weren't just returning, they were confronting everyone with the consequences of choices made in their absence. And with that, the fleet realized something terrifying. This was not the beginning of battle. It was the beginning of reckoning. As the observer stared at the advancing intelligent light, a chill ran through the entire fleet. Humanity had returned quietly once before. Now the galaxy would never be quiet again, and no one knew whether they would survive what was coming next. The fleet shuddered as the light enveloped them completely, wrapping around ships and drifting stations like a living presence. Alarms screamed, lights flickered, and every sensor overloaded, but the observer felt something impossible: calm. The pulse wasn't attacking, it was communicating. Waves of energy washed through the vessels, carrying memories, visions, and emotions of humans across time and space. Every captain, every crew member, every council delegate could feel it. The weight of a species that had survived countless trials, that had built civilizations from nothing, and that now returned to see what had become of the galaxy they once shaped. The observer's vision blurred as the pulse reached into their mind. They saw human colonies left abandoned, civilizations lifted by human intervention, and mistakes corrected decades later. They felt the patience and foresight that had allowed humanity to walk away quietly, leaving only the seeds of order behind. Then the humans appeared before them, not as ships, but as forms of energy and light, coalescing into shapes that were both familiar and transcendent. Their eyes glowed, their faces reflected the lives they had touched, and their presence radiated a power that was almost divine. A voice, both singular and collective, filled the fleet. "We left so you could learn. We returned to see what you became." The message was clear. Humanity had not abandoned the galaxy. They had trusted it to grow, to make choices, and to face the consequences. Some had succeeded, building alliances, resolving conflicts, embracing cooperation. Others had failed, hoarding power, waging war, betraying allies. The light of the humans now sorted, judging, illuminating, and revealing the true nature of every species under the Council's watch. The fleet's crews felt their mistakes laid bare. Those who had exploited human technology, who had ignored warnings or turned away from struggling colonies, could see the outcomes of their choices. Systems began to repair themselves, reconfiguring under human influence, while the humans' presence mended what had been broken, but only for those willing to accept responsibility. Entire sectors shifted, stars stabilized, and colonies once on the brink of collapse were saved, their infrastructures restored with an elegance that no alien civilization could replicate. The Council realized the truth. Humanity had never been gone. They had been testing, teaching, and now they were restoring balance. Fear turned to awe, suspicion melted into understanding. The observer looked out across the fleet, seeing that the humans' judgment was not wrath, it was guidance, a way to ensure the galaxy could thrive even in their absence. Then, just as the fleet began to relax, the final twist revealed itself. The pulse shifted, sending a ripple beyond the known galaxy toward uncharted space. The humans' forms flickered, and for a brief, terrifying moment, it became clear. The galaxy wasn't the only thing they had been watching. Other civilizations, hidden in darkness, had been waiting, and humanity's return was not just for the Council. It was a warning to the cosmos itself. The observer's heart raced. Humanity had returned, restored, and judged. But the galaxy now faced a larger stage, one where humans were no longer just participants. They were gatekeepers. The fleet remained frozen as the humans' light pulsed one last time, almost as if smiling. "We came quietly once. Now you know what we left behind. Choose wisely." And then, as suddenly as it had arrived, the light dispersed, leaving behind fleets and civilizations forever changed, staring into the vastness, realizing that the story of humanity and the galaxy was far from over. The fleets drifted in the aftermath, stunned but slowly regaining control. Ships hummed as systems rebooted, and crew members took cautious breaths, still absorbing the magnitude of what had just occurred. The humans were gone, yet their presence lingered everywhere, in repaired colonies, stabilized stars, and the faint resonance that pulsed in every communication channel. The observer stood on the bridge, staring at the empty void, realizing that the galaxy had been given a second chance, and it would never forget it. In the days that followed, the Council convened in urgent sessions. Old rivalries had softened, if only slightly, because the return of humanity had forced perspective. They could no longer argue about petty territorial disputes or hoarded resources without the memory of what true power and responsibility looked like. The pulse had revealed who had succeeded and who had failed, and the galaxy would carry that knowledge forward. Reforms were proposed, alliances were renewed, and long-abandoned colonies received resources and guidance through the systems left behind by humans. The observer spent time with crews, speaking quietly about what they had seen. They explained that humans had not returned to conquer or punish. They had returned to remind the galaxy of something fundamental. Intelligence, curiosity, and compassion were the true measures of a civilization. "They left quietly," the observer said to a young navigator. "But they always intended to come back, not with weapons, but with truth. And the galaxy will be stronger because of it, if we choose wisely." On the remote outpost that had first captured the human pulse, engineers and scientists marveled at the lingering data streams. Even now, fragments of human design and knowledge flowed through sensors, algorithms, and energy patterns. Some researchers whispered that this was humanity's way of continuing to teach, even in absence, leaving the galaxy with tools to thrive without direct interference. Others spoke of hope that human ingenuity, once understood, could inspire generations of civilizations to come. Yet the final warning, the pulse directed beyond known space, remained on everyone's minds. The galaxy had been judged and restored, but there were larger forces waiting in the darkness, and the humans had made it clear that they were watching. For the Council and every species under its governance, the lesson was unmistakable. Growth and survival depended on vigilance, cooperation, and responsibility. The humans had walked away once, returned quietly, and now left a galaxy forever changed, prepared or unprepared for the challenges ahead. The observer gazed at the stars, reflecting on what had occurred. Humanity had shown that walking away was not weakness, and returning was not conquest. They had reminded the galaxy that every choice carried consequences, every action mattered, and that intelligence without compassion could be catastrophic. And most importantly, they had demonstrated that a civilization could evolve not only in strength, but in wisdom. As the fleets returned to their home systems, and the Council's debates shifted from fear to rebuilding, A quiet sense of hope settled across the galaxy. The humans' return had ended not with destruction, but with understanding and reflection. And somewhere, far beyond the edges of known space, the light of humanity's presence lingered, silent, patient, watching, and the galaxy knew it was ready for whatever came next. The story of humanity's quiet walk, their deliberate return, and the lessons they left behind would echo through countless worlds. They had vanished, but in doing so, they had taught the galaxy the value of patience, foresight, and responsibility. And though no one knew when or if they would ever return again, the legacy of humans would remain, a quiet but eternal guide among the stars.